Oh, hey, Jeff, congratulations. Well deserved.
John, good to see you, brother. Thank you, man.
Hey, could you have imagined this when you were playing second base for the Giants in those 6 seasons? I mean, you were a football guy growing up. It was almost a secondary sport, but you played at Cal locally. You came back to San Francisco. And what's your initial reaction? I had a couple other questions as well.
No, it had John. I'm stuttering here because it has not sunk in. It has not. I didn't think about it much. During the 10 years of opportunity to get voted in, it'd come up every year, and the moments seem to pass by in not utter disappointment, but just disappointment, frustration a little bit that I wasn't better recognized. Not necessarily that I was voted in, but just, I thought, a lot of people had said, hey, you're a Hall of Famer, blah, blah, blah. And they go, okay, you blow them off. But, that just the time had gone by that you leave it alone. And I left it alone. And I loved the game. Everything I gave to the game, I left there on the field. And then in this moment today, over the last few days, absolutely unprepared, emotionally unstable. Thoughts are so far clouded, and geez, I don't even know what the right word is. They're just jumbled so much. But and I. Thanks, John. Appreciate that one, brother. When I had hugged my wife after the phone call had come in, she was the only one that had known at that moment. And I told her that a lot of the game had come rushing back to me at that moment. And similar to my retirement speech, my farewell speech that I did in LA, the old, reminds me of the no crying in baseball. Well, I was bawling when I left the game because all that emotion just overcomes you, because you think about all that time that you play in the game. And heck, I don't know, John, geez, over the last 20 plus years now, I've been out of the game. And so the game has gone away from me. And I watch my boy now who's playing for the Yankees, and, watched him through college, and, trying to help him along. And, but all of my game just came rushing back in 5 minutes, and it's just overwhelming. That's a long answer for you, brother, but
Yeah.
that's what it's like.
Understand the emotion. Just, who do you have to thank off the top of your head? I imagine your dad might be one of them. And one final question after this.
Yeah. So, if I had to pick individual guys, one of them would be Dusty Baker. I don't think there was a fire under my belly or under my ass that was lit hotter than what he did. He was, I had a great manager in New York. Had a couple managers in New York, but when I got to San Francisco, Dallas Green was a manager that really brought business back to the game for me in New York, about thinking right. And then when I got to San Francisco, it was Dusty Baker that was kind of a guy that really forced me and managed my hitting ability to be a better all-around hitter. And if there was one guy, a couple guys, sure, your family. My wife kept me sane every night coming home. She would be one for sure, top of the list. But, a guy that was a baseball guy, it had to be Dusty for sure.
Yeah. And last one, Jeff. You were on the ballot with 7 amazing ball players. Great cases could be made for all 8 of you, one of whom you played with for 6 years in San Francisco. One of the great 1-2 punches of the era. What is your reaction to Barry Bonds not getting elected again? And do you believe he should be elected to the Hall of Fame at some point, your old teammate?
Yeah, he was Barry was a good teammate of mine. He was a guy that I motivated and pushed. We knocked heads a little bit. He was a guy that motivated me at times, in frustration, in love at times, both. And he was a. I don't think I ever saw a better player play the game overall. Everything that he did, every phase of the game, maybe other than throwing. I don't know. Barry had such a great arm, but every phase of the game, Barry was one of the best players I ever saw play the game. Amazing. So, for me, I've always said that. I've always avoided the specific answer you're looking for because I don't have one, John. I don't. I'm not a voter, but I can say that he was a teammate that helped me. I believe I helped him. I believe he was one of the best baseball players I ever saw. If you're talking about moral code and all that, I'm not a voter, and I'm trying to stay away from all of that the best I can because I really don't have an opinion. I've left it. It doesn't matter to me anymore. And, I know he's been argued amongst, a lot of baseball elites about if he ought to be in or not, and, keep having that argument. And, you argue through it. And if he's not, he's not. And if he is, he is. And it's not going to matter to me one way or the other.
Jeff, congrats again.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John. Next, we'll go to Susan Slesser. Susan, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, Jeff. Congratulations.
Yeah, Susan, good to see you again. Thank you.
You obviously didn't get in off the writer's ballot for all of those years. A lot of people pointed to defense, sometimes pointed to playing with Bonds as maybe reasons. What did you think while that was happening? What reasons? Were there reasons? So many of your teammates have said you were very underrated.
I wasn't a flashy guy. I wasn't a guy that sought out headlines, and not say these other guys were. I'm just talking about me. I played on the West Coast, so a lot, and some of the best parts of my career on the West Coast. So everybody was in bed on the East Coast. They never got to watch me. I think the rap for me probably started out in the wrong direction in New York a little bit. So I think that there was this perception when I left New York and came to the West Coast that, he wasn't a good middle infielder. And that was so false. And it never mattered to me to try to change that. I was a big guy playing up the middle. I wasn't fleet of foot, wasn't fast. I wasn't a big social guy. So I just think that there's these perceptions out there that, were wrong in that I wasn't, that good of a glove in the middle infield. But I can tell you this, it truly mattered to me more about playing defense than offense. I worked hard at it. I think I made a lot of good plays. I think I saved runs, especially in the double. I was one of the Jose Vizcaino and I, one of my best teammate shortstops. We were the best second base double play combinations. I think I turned the double play better than anybody in the game, during my era. So, it irked me when I made an error. It didn't bother me so much when I struck out 3 times, but when I made one error, boy, it bothered the heck out of me. So maybe that gives you a little bit of an understanding of how much defense mattered to me. And maybe that was the bad rap that I got. I don't know.
The position of second base has been very underrepresented in general in the Hall. Is there a reason for that? I mean, obviously you've hit more home runs than any other second baseman in history, and it took you this long. Do you look around and look at other second basemen of the past and say, why isn't he in, or why isn't someone else in?
Yeah, not as second baseman, no. I played my first year in the big leagues. I played behind Roberto Alomar. I was a utility player with the Blue Jays, and the Blue Jays had signed or picked up Roberto from San Diego, and so he blocked me at second because he was so good, an all-around hitter at second, and I left the Blue Jays to go play for the Mets. And I got to play second, and that was the position I was playing. Now I was a 6'2", big 6'2" middle infielder. So a guy that I wanted to be as good or better than was Ryan Sandberg, the other big second baseman, power hitting guy. And so he kind of set the pace on the things that I knew that I could do. But for me in my era, offense was a big factor, run production, RBIs. I even remember having a conversation, I believe it was with Dallas Green in Chicago, and Dallas Green kept having me hit about seventh and eighth in the lineup. And I finally got enough goal in me, and I walked into his office and I said, hey, I was hitting about 280. And I said, hey, can I hit in the middle of the lineup? I want to be a run. I want to be where the game's being played at, in the middle of the lineup. And he just said, get out of my office, kid, and go play where I play you. And I just walked out and I went, oh, yes, sir. And so I was a fighter, and I don't know if there were a lot of guys that wanted to be like that as second baseman. They're typically smaller, they're typically faster, they typically use smaller gloves, and so I don't know if I was the last breed of an offensive second baseman. Simeon now maybe in the game now is now as a power hitting middle infielder, second baseman. I'm rattling on an answer for you because all these things are coming to my brain. But that's my answer, and hopefully you got some bits and pieces of it.
Perfect. Thanks, Jeff. Congratulations again.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Susan. Next, we'll go to Matthew Calamara in Houston. Matt, go right ahead.
Hi, Jeff. Congratulations to you. It was only a couple of years that you had in Houston with the Astros, but was wondering just kind of what did you get out of that time, those 2 seasons with Houston? What do you remember about those, and how did those maybe fit into the arc of your career?
Oh, geez. I thought that was going to be the end of my career in Houston. I loved it. I was moving my family out of San Francisco, where we had gone to the World Series, and I was moving back home to Texas. I was getting older. My kids were getting older in age, and they were always complaining because Dad was never around. So playing in Houston in the middle of the country, travel was good. The team was great. Biggio, Bagwell, Berkman, awesome teammate. And we played well in the Central. So I love the fans. Texas was where I was going to end my career and just live for the rest of my life. So it was a perfect fit for me. And it was only 2 years, and I was a little disappointed that I didn't get to stay there longer. We were 1 game away from going to the World Series my second year there, and disappointing that I didn't get to stay again to try it again, because the next year they ended up going to the World Series and then got swept because they didn't have enough offense. They could pitch really well, but I loved it in Houston. It was just short-lived there. I loved playing indoors, climate-controlled field. Thought the field was awesome. The fans were awesome. The media was great. That's a long answer to say. I loved every minute of it, and I just wish it were longer.
Thank you.